regular monthly meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Barrington. It is Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. It is 7:04 p.m. I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
President Richardson.
Here.
Trustee Burke.
Here.
Trustee Hayes.
Present.
Trustee Perkins.
Here.
Trustee Schauer. Trustee Thompson.
Here.
Trustee Van Ryn.
Here.
Please rise as you're able to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda item 4 this evening is approval of the minutes 4A of the Special Committee of the Whole from our meeting on August 3rd of this year, and B, minutes of the full board meeting held the same date. Are there edits, comments, questions for the clerk on the draft minutes as presented? There being none, Chair would like a motion to approve the block agenda items 4A and B, minutes of the Special Committee of the Whole, August 3, and minutes of the full Board of Trustees, August 3. May I have a motion, please?
So
Moved by Trustee Burke, seconded by Trustee Hayes. Is that a voice vote?
no.
Okay, clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Burke.
Yes.
Trustee Hayes.
Yes.
Trustee Perkins.
Yes.
Trustee Thompson.
Yes.
Trustee Van Ryn.
Yes.
President Richardson.
Yes, the Chair would like to ask unanimous consent that the record remain open for a period of 5 working days for purposes of any necessary technical and correcting amendments without objection, so ordered. Agenda item 5 is the President's remarks. I don't see Lauren DeJesu here for swearing in as the new Ethics Commission Chair, so we'll wait, and if she arrives later, we'll come back to the agenda item. 5B is a presentation by our very distinguished and very accomplished State Senator Dan McConkey, who was with us. He is also, for the benefit of the board and the public, been elected Senate Republican leader in Springfield, and we're very, very grateful for his tremendous leadership on so many environmental and transportation issues of importance to our community. Senator, we've made some arrangements, I think, Karen, for him to come up, and Lisa has the microphone. You can do your song stylings.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you again. It's been, I think, a few years, certainly pre-COVID, since I had the opportunity to come and update you on what's going on in our state. Just give a little bit of perspective. President Richardson mentioned a little bit of this, but back in November, I was elected by my peers to be the head of the Senate Republican Caucus, and so now I have this role of being the leader of that in this state. So it's been just a real privilege not only to represent our area here, but also to represent the interests of people all across the state. So for those of you that may want a little bit of perspective of the way in which Springfield functions, we have 59 state senators, of which there's 18 in my caucus, 41 in the Democrat caucus, and then we also have 118 members of the General Assembly. And it's been a really fascinating year with COVID and the different things that we have faced with the pandemic, the economic issues that we have faced. So we've seen in our budget year this year, we passed a kind of quote-unquote balanced budget, but it was largely due to the fact that we had about $15 billion in federal money that has come into the state in one way, shape, or form, which has helped us tremendously to be able to balance our books. Unfortunately, the majority has refused to address any of the long-term issues that continue to face our state, with over $140 billion unfunded pension liability through our various pension systems, and so forth. Instead, focusing on things like redistricting, which obviously we've had to do this year. But in redistricting, we've actually seen a real expertise in what we call packing and cracking, which is that a process in redistricting is when you take as many people from one party and pack them into districts, and you crack other communities. So if you look at the proposed districts that have been put before us, you actually see districts that snake from the city way out into the suburbs. And as a result of the initial attempt, which was not based on census data, it was based on something called American Community Survey data, which is a survey of less than 1% of the public in a given year. They took the data from 2015 to 2019 surveys and actually created maps that once the census came out, we found were up to 30% variance between districts, which is very problematic. Not only from a voter standpoint, because what this does is it dilutes the one person, one vote rule that has long been the case in our country, but it also created these wide variances that are far outside the constitutional norms, to the point that at the end of last month, the majority actually went and redrew the districts in such a manner that has caused us to, well, we're going to be furthering a case in federal court, I'll just put it that way. And so the biggest issues that we have, and we part of those people who are also complaining about the maps that the majority drew include African Americans and Hispanics. In the complaint, we've seen MALDEF, which is the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, talk about the fact that, well, there should be 3 Hispanic majority districts from the Voting Rights Act. There's only 2. There should be 5 African American districts. There's only 4. And so given the way in which they drew these districts, we're going to be continuing a case before federal court, and those will be ongoing over the next several months. Additionally, we have other issues that are pending before us right now, one of which is energy. It is a very big issue right now because Exelon has said that they're going to shut down 2 of our 5 nuclear plants without some changes that allow those plants to be profitable. We passed in the Senate just last week legislation that would actually change some of that and provide about $700 million to them in essentially bailout funds, as well as additional funds for renewable energy. And while helping renewable energy is an important endeavor at this point in time, there's some significant concerns in regards to the way the legislation is drafted and how it will affect large manufacturers, as well as people who are frankly poor and have a hard time affording increased energy bills. So these are some of the things that are going on currently. With that, I'd love to take any questions that you might have of what's going on, but let me just say how much I appreciate the fact that I represent an area that has such competent leadership in its municipalities all across my district. Many of our state legislators across the state will talk about the fact of how they have, whether it be municipal leaders, county leaders, or just regular citizens, standing in line really at the trough of the state government for additional handouts. You don't do that. You take care of your own issues. You take care of the things, except for those things that really kind of rise above and beyond and really do fall under the portfolio of the state. And so I just want to thank you for your competent fiscal leadership in regards to that over these last many years that I've been in office. So with that,
thank you. Senator, it's a privilege and a pleasure to have you with us. We have a custom here of recognizing trustees in order for questions or comments of you. Trustee Hayes is a new member of the board, elected in April, and you may know him because he was the head of the Illinois National Guard in a prior life under Governor Rauner. So, chair yields to Trustee Hayes.
Yeah, good afternoon. I did have the pleasure of, from the periphery, seeing how Springfield works or doesn't while I was adjutant general in the National Guard. There's a lot of issues here. That pension unfunded liability. For me, I sat behind the Senate Appropriations Committee behind all the pension funds. When I had my chance to get up there, my jaw dropped because I really didn't understand the problem. It's a big problem. And I wish you well on trying to change that. I think the only way it's going to work is if Illinois stands up and says, we've got to address this. And I see the cliff is coming quickly. So I applaud that you're trying to push that because it's going to be a tragedy is what I see. On the energy side, it's interesting. So I'm I work in the field of engineering and construction. We do a lot of energy work. And we're seeing a huge transformation. Obviously, renewable solar, wind, the problem with it is storing the energy when the sun's not up or when the wind's not blowing in. These nuclear plants clearly are critical for base load in the state of Illinois, and I think Exelon recognizes that. This challenge, when you think about Illinois, it's a net energy exporter. And so this is going to be a challenging problem, so it'll be interesting to see where you all take this. Energy storage is pretty close to being around the horn here to address some of these things. So we'd be interested to see where this ends up. And it's a challenge, but we're going that direction. The whole industry is moving to find better ways to reduce the carbon footprint, obviously. But nuclear is one of those technologies that doesn't emit any pollution. although there's some negative aspects in terms of the fuel cells when you're done using the rods and the like, but I applaud you there. But I appreciate doing what you're doing. It's not easy down there. I witnessed on the periphery, and I wish you well in your endeavors.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And just one real interesting thing, I met with someone who was head of the Nuclear Energy Institute out of Washington, D.C. Just a couple of months ago, and she was talking about the fact that it'll be probably 30 years or so down the road, but they're very much working on mini nuclear solutions that would be able to be run by municipalities such as yours, that would be able to have a base load that would take care of your entire town. So you'd have your renewables that would be able to fit over the top of that, but still a few decades away. And I actually just over the weekend was reading a very interesting article in a magazine that was talking about taking nuclear waste and they're actually reusing it in a different way with blue diamonds in order to help provide very powerful batteries that would be able, for example, to run your watch. And they're talking about coming out with prototypes of the watch here in the next couple of years that will run for 28,000 years using some of that leftover fuel. So there may be interesting uses for that rather than it currently, as it is right now, just sitting on site, just sitting there. So.
Trustee Perkins.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the great update. I just have a question. So I was just in Iowa this past weekend, and we were kind of off the grid. I felt like we were off the grid, but we really weren't. But there were windmills everywhere, and I just felt, so we don't have windmills in Illinois. Do we have windmills in Illinois?
Yeah, we do. Most of them are downstate. A lot of them are in farmland across the middle part of the state, also in Indiana as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was discussing with a person that lived there and said, well, yeah, talking about how the farmers are paid so much to have a windmill on their property, and I understand it's, they wire the energy off to other states, but boy, I would not like that in my backyard. What's your thought on that?
So there are, this is one of the big issues with the energy bill that's currently under discussion. So there's actually a provision in there that allows for eminent domain across 7 counties across the middle of the state. And what it would do is allow a private company, give them public utility status, to allow them to take farmland and build transmission lines across the state from Iowa headed out to the East Coast. And the reason why is because out on the East Coast, under the PGM, we're in PGM, but that part of the grid, but out on the East Coast, they'll actually pay substantially higher rates for renewable energy, regardless of where it comes from. And it's very unfortunate because here you are developing, this energy source in Iowa, and they've decided to, do this. And they're now talking about eminent domain across farmland here in Illinois, which they'll be building transmission lines to carry that energy not to Illinois or not to feed our grid, but to feed out to the East Coast. And so it's a big issue. It's a significant, I think, problem. There's a lot of people who are opposed to granting a private company eminent domain powers over private land. And I think that there will be a lot of litigation that ends up over that. I wish there would be a much more comprehensive solution. We may see some of that come out of the infrastructure bill that is currently being debated in Washington, D.C., but has yet to cross the finish line. And we don't know how that'll end up, kind of finally resolving itself.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Burke.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Congratulations on your appointment as chair of the Republican caucus.
I've got both congrats and condolences.
Yes, I understand, but clearly people value your leadership skills and recognize the challenge, and that certainly you're up for that. And thanks for being great to this district and for being a friend of this community, a good friend of this community. That's important to us, your representation, and also your acknowledgement that you understand that we work real hard to do what we do here, to make it and be fiscally responsible and do the right things by our residents here. And often goes unnoticed. What a good job, not just us, but many of your districts, municipalities do in being fiscally responsible. and managing their budgets and taking care of their residents all at the same time. I guess the one question I have for you would be, with all the federal money, assistance, COVID, unemployment, and the bonus, ending, with money still coming into the state in other ways, how do you see Illinoisans getting back to work, right? In other words, are we going to get our people back to work now so that our business owners can run their businesses and get labor and the things that they need? And what do you see the state doing, to solve this dilemma of labor shortages now that this federal funding is ending? Do you see opportunity here?
Well, I definitely see opportunity. I mean, it has been a big issue of debate in regards as to whether or not to end the enhanced benefits early. Some states did that. We did not choose to do that. Part of the thing is whenever you have this type of intervention, you always end up with some sort of cliff. People get hurt in that process. I can't tell you the number of businesses that I've talked to who have been like, my district director, Deb Ackerson, her husband is a UPS driver, and he delivers in the industrial park there in Lake Surrey. Every single business that he stops at has people that they're hiring for him. So it's a very big issue. We have a lot of people who've unfortunately been sitting on the sidelines, due to the paychecks that have been coming out. I think that's, indisputable in many respects. I think it will take some months, if not perhaps a couple of years, for this to kind of settle out in some way. I think we've all read in newspapers about the issues that we've had with people feeling like there are so many opportunities out there, they're just leaving their jobs in a circumstance in which they might not otherwise do so, which is creating additional upheaval within the market. I think that one of the big issues that we need to look at long term is making sure that we have created a situation in which Illinois is a net importer of people again, right? When the census data came out, we were one of only 3 states to actually lose population. We've had other states that are actually, losing representation in Congress, but that's because they didn't grow as fast as other states. We were actually one of 3 states to lose. Us, West Virginia, and Mississippi. West Virginia and Mississippi have some systemic issues within their states that cause them to be a net exporter of people, right? Illinois is not in the same circumstance as those other 2 states. The reason why we've been a net exporter of people, high property taxes, the other challenges that exist with people choosing, to stay here, not to stay here. We don't have the advantages of places like California and, other states where they have wonderful, weather, mountains, things to do, like with your time. A lot of people retire here and go, it's too cold, it's too darn cold just to stay here. And so, we have to be, in order for us to be a net importer of people, we actually have to do better than some of these other states that have those inherent advantages of either lots of things to do in your off time or, great scenery or great weather and so forth. We have some fantastic transportation. I mean, there's an ethanol plant that's in the middle of the state who I've met with the owner with. It actually costs him less, even with our additional regulations and taxes and so forth, to ship, 1 barrel of ethanol from here to Taiwan than it would be if he was in Texas, even though there's a much greater environment. And that's because he's right on the Illinois River. He can put that out on the river and get it because of the very cheap shipping costs and to date, low energy costs that have been associated with that. And then this is why, we have some great inherent benefits. The fact that we're losing population is so indicative of the policy problems that we have here in the state. I have a resident, she lives in Mundelein. She's a widow. She lives in a small 3-bedroom house where she and her now deceased husband raise their children. She just wants to live out her days in that house. She is on Social Security only. Unfortunately, her husband died early enough that he did not have a strong nest egg for them. So she lives on $14,000 a year. Her property taxes on her house are $10,000 a year. So she's living off of Fremont Townships, food bank and things like that in order to try to get by. That's just criminal, right? That's just so problematic. And especially when someone like her, she could move to another state like Tennessee or something and have property taxes that are 1/5, what they would be here. So we have a lot of things that we need to address, and this is why but we have such opportunity too.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much. Thanks again for being here.
Before I yield to Trustee Thompson, just on your point, when my wife's mother passed away 9 years ago in South Carolina in the upstate, near Clemson University, we chose to keep her house, and we'll remodel it and ultimately live down there, at least part of the time. And it's the same acreage as what we own here. And the property taxes are 1/10 of what we pay. Now, I can make an argument that we have terrific schools here, and I'm willing to pay, even though my kids are low income, to make sure that we continue to have fabulous schools here. But it just seems to me that we can't stay competitive forever if we have a cost disadvantage like that. So, Trustee Thompson, happy to recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, again, congratulations on your chairmanship. That's terrific.
Thank you.
You're really the type of person we need in that position. And I'd like to go back to the employment report you were talking with Trustee Burkheim. It just seems to me that's probably one of the most crucial issues for business in our state. And I just, wonder how we're going to get through this in the short term, because businesses are really in a position where they're facing dangerous situations, not being able to have enough people to run their businesses and to take care of their customers. How do you think this is going to play out? Do you have any idea?
I don't entirely know. I mean, part of the issue is the fact that, and I've said this publicly before, I think that our governor, while he owns many businesses, has never really run one. He has hired other people to do that for him, and I don't think he truly understands some of the difficulties that are associated with actually running a business. This is another big issue that we have in Springfield, frankly. We have a number of people who either insurance salesmen or what have you. We have a lot of people who are professional politicians who have no idea what it is to actually run an operation, run a business, sign the bottom of a check, not just the back of one. And this is one of our bigger kind of long-term issues that we have here is that failure to understand. And this is why it is so important for local communities, as you're talking with other mayors or as you're talking with other trustees, make sure that they are reaching out to their local elected representatives and saying, this is what we need in our area. We need you to behave in this manner. You'll get through to some of them. I mean, it was fascinating. This last week I was up in Lake Geneva for a conference on insurance. So it was all these different insurance providers who do business in Illinois. And there was a number of us legislators who were there as well. And there was a legislator panel, and there was a legislator there, a woman who has never run anything. She just doesn't know. She believes in socialized health care and so forth. And she actually sat up there in front of all these different insurance government affairs people, and we actually talked about legislation she wanted to run, which is essentially put all of these people out of business and nationalize or to have government take over all of their work. And it was interesting, she was from the other party than me. The individual who was right next to her, who actually is the Democrat chairman for the House Insurance Committee, actually, after she was done, took the microphone and says, yeah, she has some crazy ideas. I mean, even within their own party, there was a recognition that there are members of the legislature who are advancing bills that they truly do not understand how it works. They have this theory of what would be nice, and that's what they go on, and that, is it. And that's the real, why it's so necessary for us to speak up and continue to push back.
Thank you.
Trustee Van Ryn.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to meet you, Senator.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for being here. Being relatively new to the board, my question for you is this: what can we do as local leaders to help you and your colleagues move those important initiatives forward at the state level?
So one of the things that we witnessed this year was municipalities banding together to try to help make sure that the local government distributed fund was funded at 100%. And that was something that our caucus pushed. I have a One of my members of the caucus from the western suburbs, who used to be a mayor of St. Charles, Senator Don DeWitt, was very vociferous in regards to the fact that this needed to be maintained fully. Because local municipalities, you depend upon this. I mean, it's something that, was an agreement back when the income tax and was first put into place. This was a promise that was made, and the legislature has broken that promise repeatedly over the years. This is something where, look, at the end of the day, it is vitally important for, I mentioned the fact that there's a number of legislators who have really no outside employment, and this is their full-time gig. And being the 5th highest paid legislature in the country, that's not atypical, right? To have people who feel, are getting enough. They are married to someone who also has an income, and so with this income, they're able to kind of do this full-time and aren't required to go out and work in the real world. But one of the things they really want to do is they want to stay in office. They want to continue to be able to push ideas and advance legislation. And so when they're hearing from their people at home that says, don't do this, don't cut the local government distributed fund, even though you didn't get to spend more money. This is the type of thing that is really vital to hear. And so that what I strongly encourage is making sure that you're participating in the statewide groups that are, of the municipal league and so forth, the ones in the area, and make sure that you're encouraging those leaders from other municipalities, from counties, from townships, to say, you don't like it, speak up. You're in an area, you have a state representative who doesn't get it, you have a state senator who doesn't get it. Be in their office. You're a local official then. You're someone who's a potential electoral threat, right? You could run against them at some point. Make sure that you speak up. That's so vitally important because, that's just the value of a participatory democracy, right? And the fact is that we get to make our voices heard and continue to press these ideas out there. And when there is enough pressure at the end of the day, good ideas can win.
Dan, I've been doing this a long time too in my day job, and so I understand what it takes to be successful. I admire you taking the challenge on of being the leader. I served in the minority on staff in the U.S. House back when Democrats, including the one I'm married to, had almost a 60-seat majority. And it was thought to be irreversible, and sometime later, a fellow from Georgia named Newt Gingrich thought otherwise, and things that were not imaginable politically happened. So, the genius of our system is that ideas do have a chance to compete. You no doubt face an uphill climb because the media and all the other institutional forces are probably supportive of the other team that you play against. But, I appreciate the style you bring to politics. You're not vitriolic, you're not bombastic. You're a decent human being, and I think that's the first starting point. Frankly, I think that of Governor Pritzker. He's been very kind in his dealings with me over the years. And it's my hope, maybe this is naive in my later years, but that decent people can still overcome differences. And I'm very confident that you will acquit our region of the state in showing that, yes, people can be elegant and be tough on the problems without taking it out on each other. And I commend you for that approach and that style. I think it's desperately needed. Draw a firm, hard line in the sand, but not everybody's mother has to wear combat boots. And so I appreciate that. Just for the benefit of the board, our representatives, Donnie Strino and Brian Daly, work closely with Senator McConkey, and through their efforts, as he said, we were able to engage some $165,000 on infrastructure for the community for a variety of projects that really go to key things around flood control, aeration, and transportation, of course. And these are expenses that a small municipality simply cannot countenance within its own limited resources if we're going to be financially responsible. And I have to give a plug to the team in front of you. We are in great shape financially because Mrs. Hirsch and the administrator and Trustee Hayes keep a close eye on me. And they remind me it's not our money, it's the voters' money. So we're grateful for your leadership, and we really appreciate you taking time to be with us.
Well, thank you. It's been a real privilege to be here. If I can just end by saying, when I first moved to Lake County nearly 3 decades ago, we would say, Illinois has its challenges, but then we'd look at Wisconsin and laugh. And, about 10 years ago or so, there was a dramatic change in Wisconsin to the point that, Wisconsin, we have businesses that you go across the border and there's business after business that has been set up over there. And it's obviously been a real challenge for us, but it gives hope. It gives, us to be able to look at the fact when you set up your policies right, when you actually do create policies that work for the people, business comes, people come, jobs come, opportunity comes. And one of the big things that I argue is the fact that it's really vitally important for us to have good policies because that's pro-family. My daughter left the state and is now over in Indiana, and where she's finishing her senior year at Purdue. I would love for her to have stayed here, but she left where there was other opportunity. Us having good policies here would have helped my wife to, have her dream of our daughter staying closer. That hasn't happened, but it doesn't have to stay that way. It's something that we can change going forward. So thank you very much.
God bless. Thank you very much. Lisa, thank you for your help.
Thank you.
See you again soon, Dan. God bless.
Thank you.
We're going to go in reverse order. We'll go to agenda item 5A, which is the swearing in of our longtime friend and our former colleague, Lauren DeJesu, as the new chair of the Lake Barrington Ethics Commission. Wonderful to see you again.
Good to see you. I'm sorry I was late.
Hi, Lauren.
Thanks for the reminder, Karen. Yes.
Thank you. As you know, Mr. Bateman also is responsible for keeping me on target with things. The chair would like a motion from the board to advise and consent to the appointment by the chair of Lauren DeJesu as chair of the Village of Lake Barrington Ethics Commission for a term ending April 30th, 2023. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Trustee Perkins, seconded by Trustee Burke. Write that down. You got that, Lisa?
You sure you want to do this?
No.
Recant my motion.
I didn't know I promoted to chair.
That's what happens when you miss a meeting. That's how I got volunteer.
Just a little miss a lot, yeah.
Jim, we're about to have a roll call vote on a motion to advise and consent to the appointment of Lauren DeJesu as chair of the Village Ethics Commission. The clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Perkins?
Yes.
Trustee Burke?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Thompson?
Yes.
Trustee Van Ryn?
Yes.
President Richardson?
Yes, wonderful. We're very grateful. You have such gravitas and credibility in the community, and hopefully in this job you never have to have a meeting. We're grateful for your integrity and the sense of perspective you bring. Your service on this board has always been greatly respected and revered, and we're grateful for your willingness to step back up again.
Thanks, Kevin. It's fun to get back into it, really. I miss you guys.
That's it. Well, I appreciate it. Would any member of the board like a moment to recognize former trustee DeJesu, now chairman, Trustee Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I just want to say welcome back again, and it's so very nice to have you with us. And it's just very difficult to say anything other than you'll do a wonderful job, and thank you for considering coming back. Thank you.
And this is a long night because his Georgia Bulldogs beat up on my Clemson Tigers last Saturday, so I've had to behave tonight. Lauren, we are grateful, as I said, and I treasure the fact that our community has never had a serious ethics issue.
Yeah.
Rich spent a lot of years, like his predecessor, Randy Rigby, in the military, and one of the things that when you work in the federal government especially, they drill ethics into you. And the key thing is, it is so important that we remain cognizant of appearance as well as actual behavior. We might be absolutely innocent in the technical requirements of the law, but heavens to Betsy, it can sure smell like 3-day-old fish left out in the sun just by the way it appears in public. And I recognize the fact that you appreciate both the letter and the spirit of the law and using good judgment on matters.
Thanks.
Would you like to say anything to the board beyond that?
Just, when I said I miss you guys, when I served on the board, there was some times early on where there were several times where I said, I'm out of here, that's it. Because there was so much confrontation and some issues that people, I mean, I got ticketed out here by my neighbors over something. But really, toward the end, after I got off, it's such a wonderful board because you're not fighting with each other. I think so many people have such interesting points of view, and we respected each other. And I think in that regard, this board was novel. From what I read in the papers from so many of the others with all the divisiveness and confrontation and that would happen. And we just didn't have that. We came to good decisions. I think we had different points of view, but we managed to come together. And it was a special experience, something I never wanted to get involved in politics, ever. And there I was, so, yeah. But it was fun, it was good, so.
Hey,
time
you
for
and our dear friend, and may she rest in peace, Connie Schofield, were two of the ones when I first got involved in this board in 1999,
Yeah,
who kind of charted that way for me to understand that, you know, it's, this tells you a lot about, I have apparently way too much time on my hands, but I enjoy watching some of the old YouTube videos of the Reagan years, and he went up to Boston for a dinner to honor Tip O'Neill. And it's a wonderful piece because it speaks of an America that I fear is slipping away, where, as he said, we can be tough on the issues and take it out on the issues, but not on each other. And I think if you were the hallmark of that approach, we haven't had a lot of real nasty kind of infighting the way a lot of other boards have. I credit the fact that elegant people lead her. I was going to suggest as part of Teresa's rebranding efforts that we change the name to Lake Woebegone, but I found out they had a patent or copyright on it, so Garrison Keeler wouldn't sell it to me, so. So we look forward to having you back more actively, and we do invite the Ethics Commission to planning sessions and other things we do with the Plan Commission and the board, so we'll look forward to your experience there as well.
all right. If I can help, I'm happy to.
Okay, now, who will administer the oath?
I'm going to,
Please.
I believe.
Yeah, great.
We have the, motion was made second.
Right, and Lisa's called the roll.
Yeah, okay, right, thanks. Lauren, if you gladly, please raise your right hand
Okay.
and repeat after me.
I, Lauren DeJason,
Thank you. Having been appointed to the office of Ethics Commission Chair
having been appointed to the office of Ethics Commission Chair
in the village of Lake Barrington,
in the village of Lake Barrington,
in the county of Lake,
county of Lake,
aforesaid,
aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
the
Illinois,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of Ethics Commission Chair
the duties of the office of Ethics Commission Chair
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, you're starting.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lauren. God bless.
All right,
Thank
I'll
you.
make sure notice of the first meeting.
Good night, thank you.
Oh, God. I would like to go a little out of order and have the treasurer introduce our guest, Ann Word from Waterback and Allen.
Happy to do so, thank you. So tonight, Ann Scales is here. She's the principal. Waterback and Amon was in charge of the audit that we recently underwent here at Village Hall. You all have your books, I believe, at your seats, so she'll go through in some brief manner. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know it almost seems like ancient history because that was some time ago, but it's meant to do with the shape for like another month and a half, I believe, so we've got plenty of time. So.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Everyone should have the audits in front of them, the annual financial report, so I'll just kind of go through and highlight some key pages that you can flip to or reference later on.
And I have to ask, just if you would please for a moment introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself.
Oh,
I
okay.
certainly know your firm, but I think it's always helpful for trustees. I do note, as I recall, you are a graduate of Marquette University, so it's a shame Trustee Schaller is not here, because he's a proud Marquette alum, and I give him a hard time because I went to Notre Dame and we argue about basketball.
Yes,
often.
big rivals, yes.
So please, a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
Excuse me, on my day, Mr. President, they'll always be the Warriors.
Yes. Well, when I started, we didn't have a mascot, and then it was quickly changed to the Golden Eagles. My name is Ann Scales. I've been with Water Rec and Amon for 13 years. First job right out of college. So I've been there and I've worked my way in the audit department. And now I have a few audit clients that I still manage, including Lake Barrington. And I also work with a bunch of the other audit clients, wrapping up, writing the financial reports and getting all of the financials ready to be issued for the villages, park districts that we work with.
And before you begin, one other question for you, and I apologize for interrupting again. My wife, like the treasurer and you, are trained in finance and accountancy. I have skills, but they're not in that area
Okay.
at all. So I'm going to interrupt probably with questions and ask the other trustees to feel open to do so. Using a layperson's phrase, if our finances were given a grade in school in terms of our financial processes and systems and our financial stability, greatest teacher.
This question is always so very difficult to answer because every municipality is different. But you guys have most of your funds have all had increased balances during the fiscal year, all positive ending fund balance in that position, which is great, especially with last year and the pandemic. And a lot of revenues and expenses both decreased. There's not a lot of debt. You don't have any pension. You only have the IMRF pension. You don't have police and fire pension that's reported on your books. So I would say everything looks very good for the village.
Wonderful. Well, there's an old expression that my mother-in-law used, that these books are as clean as my grandmother's kitchen floor. Thank you. I won't interrupt again. I
No,
promise.
no problem.
I'll
Yeah,
behave.
no problem. Any other questions, you can just let me know, wave me down, and I'll answer them. So starting with the annual financial report, I'll just, like I mentioned, just reference some page numbers. If there's any questions throughout, just please let me know. The first page I'll draw your attention to is page 4, which is the audit opinion. We issued an unmodified opinion, which is the best that we can issue as auditors. Basically, this means everything that we tested was materially correct, and all of the internal controls that we reviewed were also sound. Page 6 is the management discussion and analysis. This is about 10-page cliff note summary of what happened during the fiscal year for the village. It compares directly to the prior fiscal year and the current fiscal year. There's also some nice charts and graphs for some visual readers of the report. Page 19 actually starts with the financial statements. The first set of statements are the full accrual statements, so these will include capital assets and long-term debt. The ending net position for the governmental funds was $4.2 million, and the business type activities were $4.9 million. The next statement of activity, showed that the governmental fund or governmental activities increased $648,000, and the business type increased $294,000. Page 23 is the fund level financial statement. So this is showing the governmental activities as a modified accrual, meaning that there is no long-term debt or any capital assets. The general fund for the village had increased $519,000 for an ending balance of $2.4 million. This increase was due to several of the revenue counts for the village were higher than anticipated. The motor fuel tax fund decreased $444,000, ending $389,000 fund balance, mostly due to planned spending for the road maintenance and constructions that the village had for the fiscal year. The open space of the capital projects fund stayed about the same for last year, ending with $44,000. Page 27 is the fund for the water sewer. This mirrors what was shown earlier because they do show the capital assets and long-term debt on their funds statement. So it increased $294,000 and with an ending of $4.9 million, again due to increase in some billing for the revenues. Page 30 starts the notes to the financial statements. The note 1 is a lot of words and technical accounting language describing the summary of accounting policies. Page 37 is note 2, which describes the budget for the village. Page 38 starts note 3, which explains some of the detailed numbers that you can find in the front financial statements, just some more details. So it starts with the deposits and investments note disclosure, which is showing how much cash the village has on their books and in the bank statements, as well as the investments. Page 40 is the capital assets. So you'll see by asset class the additions and depreciation for both governmental and the business type fund. Page 42, some details into the long-term debt that the village has. And then page 48 is the IRF pension disclosures. And this will show that the ending net pension liability for the village had decreased $83,000 for an ending balance of about $40,000. Page 59 for the report starts the budget to actual statements. So each fund for the village has its own statement showing the original and final budget, which were approved by the board, comparing to the actual activity for the fiscal year. And then finally, on page 71, we have some supplemental schedules. So there's a 10-year history for tax data for the village. On page 71, as mentioned, and then page 73, it shows some of the tax rates for the village, as well as some of the overlapping tax districts, again, for a 10-year history. There were 2 management letter comments that we had issued to the board. One relates to GASB 87 for leases, which is just making the board and the staff aware that there's a new pronouncement coming in 2 years, and the auditors will work with the village to make sure that that is implemented. And then finally, the general fund was over budget, just about $6,000. So we just called that attention to the board for that. Wanted to thank Peggy and Debbie again for all of their hard work, making the audit a smooth process for myself from start to finish. So it's great been working with them. I know this is their last year that they before they retire, so it's been a real pleasure the last few years working with them, getting the audit all wrapped up. Thank you again for your time. Any questions, please let me know.
One of the things that we have a custom of doing is recognizing trustees in order for questions and comments. I'll start this time on my left with trustee Van Ryn. Any questions or comments?
No questions at this time, but thank you, Go Marquette.
Yes, thank you.
That's right. I forgot. We've got another.
Gotta watch this.
My Notre Dame monopoly could be under threat.
Watch out.
Trustee Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one question that's on the management letter.
Okay.
Could you, the excess funding in general fund,
Yes.
could you go over that? It was so quick, I didn't really understand what you were saying.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we look at is basically just the final approved budget for the board approved versus what was actually spent for the fiscal year in the general fund. And there was $6,000 more spent than what was approved.
That's what, okay.
I
I
it was
have a report later, sorry to interrupt, but I didn't address it in my
Okay.
report.
We had a management response that Peggy typed up, basically just explaining some of the COVID expenses that were not taken into account for the budget.
Trustee Burke.
No questions at this time, but thank you for being with us and thanks for your help on this.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Perkins.
No questions, but thank you.
Great, thank you.
A lot of information. Thanks.
And Trustee Hayes, Chair of the committee.
Clearly, we have some stellar employees that work this. The amount of work that they do like this is awesome.
Yes.
Just a question for you. So things that we can do better from your perspective to make this more transparent and a better process, simpler process?
Sure. I mean, they're making sure that the policies that the board has are up to date and that the village is in compliance with those and confirming that the internal controls are all, it's a small staff, but anytime you can have people double check and review each other's work financially. Not saying that that's an issue, but just going forward, making sure that that is still taken into account and addressed if there's throughout the time for the village. That's what we look at as auditors is most important is internal controls.
Okay. No, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And
Great.
remind me of this. We don't really have pension obligations the way we hear the state does, or the city of Chicago, or the big counties do, where would our, and I should know this, so mea culpa, but where would our liabilities for pension obligations be?
Yeah, so you only have the IMRF pension.
Right.
So the pension, the net pension liability is just recorded on the statement of net position, that very first statement of the report. It's only in your governmental funds, it's not showing in any of your fund levels. So that's where it's showing this year about the $40,000 liability. And it fluctuates each year due to a lot of outside factors that the village can't control. As long as the village makes their IMRF payments each monthly as prescribed by IMRF, that's kind of like a mortgage, it will be paid down by year 2040.
Thank you. And I appreciate Trustee Hayes' point. I failed to mention the fabulous work that Debbie Vernon has done for many years. And she's just been spectacular in this work. And between Debbie and Peggy and Karen, I can promise you as our auditors, I don't even take a paper clip out of this pen. So I feel guilty stapling something. So thank you very much, and we appreciate you driving all the way up here tonight as well.
Great, thank you. It was great to be here. Have a good night.
Thank you. I always like that picture than my grandmother's kitchen floor.
I just want to thank Ann really quick because unfortunately this is our last year with Lauderback because of our new arrangement with the internal bookkeeping that or accounting that we're doing. So we do need to switch auditors. So this is our last year. I'm really sorry to see you go under auditors. It's been wonderful working with you the last, I guess, 7 years I've been, 5 years or so.
Yes, yes.
And I'm really going to miss the relationship.
I'm sorry to hear that. So please accept our thanks for your great service.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll still be involved, just not as tough.
Right.
Yes, no problem.
We're going to move to agenda item number 6. This is the first opportunity in the agenda for the public to address the board on non-agenda items. I see we have a guest. Sir, anything you'd like to ask or?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for everything that you do, for not being paid for this, I really appreciate it. I appreciated the senator here, and my only request is for maybe your consideration.
And can you introduce yourself first and state your name and address for the record? Is that
Sure. My name is Rob Pento. I live on Fieldstone Court, and this is the first time I've ever come to a meeting. But given that this whole issue with COVID and people being a little bit nervous about being in a public setting or coming to a group setting, maybe if the board could have some consideration of, I know these are recorded, I've actually watched them on YouTube, it's great, thank you for that. To have some kind of, it doesn't need to be a video conference, but maybe to be able to have these in a conference call. So people who can't make it, maybe out of town, maybe have COVID concerns, would be able to participate.
I appreciate your question. First, thanks for coming up here, and thank you for the kind words. That's not always the experience we hear or have when people come to the podium, so thank you. During the pandemic, when there were really serious concerns, the board met for about 15 months by Zoom meeting exclusively, because we weren't going to be a super spreader. We abided by the state requirements and the federal requirements in that regard. It's only in the last couple of months that we felt, as Governor Pritzker changed the ratings for different counties and regions of the state. But tonight we're all wearing masks again, and we may go back. If we do Zoom meetings, those links will be publicly listed on our website, so anybody from the public or from the media would be able to attend. The challenge in having that feature when we also meet live, and it's just an expense item, is creating that capability to do it in real time. If that were like a big TV screen instead, it's pricey. And we've had, Karen and I have talked a little bit about this. To probably get that right, and I'm just blue skying as a techno geek who likes sci-fi and video and so forth, it could be 25 grand. And so we're, because you came and took the trouble to do this, I promise we will look into it.
I wasn't even considering video, just a voice call.
Okay.
Right. So I thought about the expense of how much that would be. just a voice call as a thing. Our homeowners association does everything now through video call. My mother in Barrington, who's in McHenry County, she's in a large homeowners association. They went from a direct meeting like this to video conferencing as well as the physical meeting. It's just something if you could consider, I'd really appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming by. Chair will ask that the administrator detail some possibilities there, some approaches
Sure.
for our consideration. Terrific. Thank you. Agenda item 7 tonight is the consent agenda. We've got a couple of things here. As everyone knows, the consent agenda allows us to move multiple items by omnibus vote in an expedited manner. Illinois law permits this, so that we have one single unanimous roll call vote on a number of things to help with expediting people's business. 7A is ARPA Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund Ordinance, and I will have the administrator go through these items in a moment, one by one. B, application for temporary use special event citizens for conservation. C, pavement sealing various village streets. D, IDOT resolution for an IGA regarding maintenance of certain traffic control signals. E, intergovernmental agreement for traffic control of Tower Lakes in North Barrington. F, floodplains and floodways in Lowlands Conservancy zoning overlay districts. G, employee conference expenses. And so with that, Chair will yield to the administrator for a brief discussion of each.
Sure. The ARPA funds, the village will be receiving over the next couple of years a total of a little over $661,000, close to $662,000, allocated to our village. It's based on population. It's part of the American Recovery Plan Act, and we will be required to. If we're going to pursue using these funds, do them in certain ways. There's a lot of federal regulations involved with these, the state, et cetera, et cetera. Trustee Hayes and I will be working in the upcoming months to go over all of the information that's coming out right now on potential expenditures. So I kind of joked in the past, like, boy, I wish I could just pave my streets with this, but that's not one of the approved uses. So we'll be looking at some of the uses for that. And as part of that application for this funding, we had to say that we're going to be following certain rules. Some of it with the Equal Rights Act, some with, terms and conditions, et cetera, et cetera. So what our attorney had suggested is that we approve an ordinance that authorizes and ratifies us the ARPA financial submittal. So that's just kind of more just like dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And so we'll be paying very close attention to all the details as we go forward. The Citizens for Conservation, they once again are asking to use Friday Farm for their annual tree and shrub sale. And this is just pre-sale only, so it's people who have ordered from CFC, and they're going to be picking up on appointment times on September 11th. So they'll start on September 8th, later this week with deliveries. They have volunteers lined up to help water the plants, the trees and shrubs until they can be picked up, and last year it worked very smoothly. So this is their application for a temporary use special event for that. The pavement sealing is, you recall every year we do a Reclamite program. I call that the oil of Olay for our streets. It moisturizes, and it actually extends the pavement life. Several years ago, I went through the science of that with the board, and this is just this year's program for the streets that we've resurfaced this year. It was interesting to see that the price usually goes up a couple cents a square yard every year, but this year it actually went down a penny. So I was glad to see that, and it's probably reflective of gasoline prices at the time when the bids went out and things like that. So, the IDOT resolution for an IGA regarding maintenance of certain traffic control devices. This is something we do every 10 years, whether we want to or not, with IDOT, and it just puts in a contract form like, hey, these are the signals that IDOT maintains in your town, and
some of them they pay 100% of, and some we pay a little bit of. So for example, we pay 25% of the electric cost and any maintenance cost of the signal at Kelsey, for example, and that's because the Plum Tree location, even though it looks like it's going to Barrington Hills, that signal's actually in Lake Barrington, so we get to pay a quarter of that. So lucky us. And we pay a third of the maintenance and 100% of the energy charge at the Pepper Road sign signal, because that was one of the things that when we were doing economic development several years ago, that we approached IDA and said, hey, let's do a study and let's get a signal here. So, so that's pretty nondescript. The IGA with Tower Lakes in North Barrington, that's something that we do about every 3 years. And Tower Lakes has a police department, and they have an officer go out a couple times a day on school days to help direct traffic out there, since there is no signal. The signal's not warranted in that location, but the 3 governmental bodies think it's worth to have an officer out there to help direct traffic and make sure it stays safe. And the floodplains and floodways and lowland conservancy zoning overlay districts, which is a big mouthful, our plan commission met last week or 2 weeks ago. It's all a blur right now. 2 weeks ago, thank you. And we went through the village's floodplains and floodways overlay districts and the lowland conservancy overlay districts. And basically, these are, I'll say, antiquated, outdated rules in our code, because since the time when those were adopted, we were kind of ahead of the game. So we adopted things about floodplains and wetlands before Lake County SMC ever did. So they subsequently to that have adopted the watershed development ordinance, which we follow by our code, and the WDO follows FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We participate in the flood insurance program. So we are already following these higher rules, and so it makes our rules kind of irrelevant, and then some of the things that these old things cited aren't even around anymore. So it's just bringing our code up to date. And last but not least, our village clerk, Lisa Pimentelapa, she completed her 3-year certified municipal clerk program. I think it was a couple years ago now, and started on the master's program, and then it was a little interrupted by COVID. And this year they're back in action at Eastern Illinois University, and I'm asking approval that she be allowed to travel to that. It's in Bloomington, and attend her training. And then she will graduate with a master's of the municipal clerk program. So that's last on me.
Before I call the question, does any member of the board have a question on any of the agenda items 7A through G for the administrator?
I do, if I may go.
Absolutely. Chair recognizes the gentleman.
Thank you. How much is this IGA between IDA and this cost annually? I know paper, you might know about how much we spend on these maintenance these things.
It is very minimal. Let's see, it's in the budgeted amount, and it's $2,700.
Okay, so very small. Okay, thank you for that. And then on the action for the floodplains, this discussion, they're basically is it new ordinance, or we're taking the old ordinance and reflecting reality today?
We're reflecting reality today and getting rid of all the old stuff in our current ordinance that no longer applies.
Thank you very much.
Further questions?
Trustee Thompson. I just wanted to congratulate Lisa on her great work, and we're looking forward to seeing that ring on your finger, the master's ring.
I'm going to make her wear one of those mortar boards with the tassels.
That's terrific, because, you know, I mean, it's really important that the people that we depend on here have as much knowledge as they possibly can, and having, you know, just increasing the knowledge you have about what you're doing makes it much easier on all of us, and it makes the village a better place. So thank you.
I remember the first time this board met Lisa, was during our consideration of an ordinance concerning short-term residential rentals. And she was sitting about halfway between Ally and Lauren, and there were some very anxious people in the audience because of the events that had transpired. And what impressed me, I think it was impressed all the board such that we reached out to you, is that you said, please be assured that my husband and I would never do anything that would put our neighbors or our community at risk or do anything to harm anybody's property values. And the fact that you did that in a tough room, in a tough crowd, I've been there and I admire them because I've been that target, and it showed great character. You learned a lot in this job, and you've come an awfully long way in a fairly short time. And I think I was privileged to work for the late Jim Donnelly at Arbor Donnelly. He always made fun of himself about being born wealthy. And he said, it's not where you start, it's the distance between where you start and where you end. And I look at the great progress you've made. We have a high-performing team that reflects the leadership of our administrator. But you should take particular pride, to Trustee Thompson's point. You have really begun to fully come into your own, and we're grateful and it's glad to see.
Thank you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that you gave me to serve the village. I just love it. I love my job and everyone here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The Chair would like a motion to approve items to 7A through 7G as stated in the recommended action of the consent agenda, and accept with unanimous consent those items as having been fully read into the record. May I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Trustee Van Ryn, seconded by Trustee Thompson. And the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Van Ryn?
Yes.
Trustee Thompson?
Yes.
Trustee Burke?
Yes.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Perkins?
Yes.
President Richardson?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay. Page numbers here are correct, excuse me. Agenda item 8 this evening is the Treasurer's Report. Mrs. Hirsch.
Thank you very much. I have to talk about the audit report for just a second. Debbie and I do not take management letter comments, we take them very seriously. We don't take them lightly. And we usually fight them down. Like, we're like bulldogs. Like, no, that comment makes no sense. I'm not taking that comment. I can usually talk about any comment they make. Debbie was really a bulldog in this when I said, you know what, the comment's correct. We wrote a budget, so we'll have to take it, but we can explain it. So the board remembers at the beginning of it's a long time ago, but COVID was attacking the country, and we really pared down our budget. We took Featherling out of the budget. We were not going to develop Featherling. We had purchased it, but we were going to hold off on developing it. And then mid-year, we found out we could not extend. The Department of Natural Resources, or whoever they are, said, no, you can't extend that, you use it now or you lose it. And the board met, and we had the funds, and so we went ahead and developed Featherling. We had not accounted for that. So if we take those expenses out of the budget, we were actually under budget by $96,000. So I am not taking that comment lightly. I've been bothered by it. I could not wait to and in fact, we budgeted for fiscal 21 like a $7,000 loss. We had a $520,000 net profit. I think the comment is extremely irrelevant, but I think they're required to say, hey, you spent over what you were intending to spend. So anyways, I just wanted to pass that on. We had no adjusting journal entries, which we're always very proud of. When auditors come in, they leave, and the books are, we might notice things along the way that we make the adjustment ourselves. We're not told to. So Debbie and I were very hard on that. So just, I see a comment letter, I go, oh no, we're not taking that. So anyways, and then one more thing I wanted to point out, because it's been a big topic at the state level, is the net pension liability. So on page 57 and 58, I hate to have to go back to your books, but it's kind of interesting to look at like the 7-year history of the liability. And what I want to point out is the lines are off. Because when I first saw it, I thought I had a stroke. If you look on page 57, you'll see that employers' net pension liability for the year ended 2015 was almost $309,000. That's a pretty good size. And then when you start to follow the lines over, it looks like this year is $1.4 million. But their kind of spacing is just off a tiny bit, so it's really only $39,000. So if anyone else was confused by that, And the point I also want to make too is that our net position is about 4.2 million. The $39,000 is less than 1%. So it's almost irrelevant. When you see what's going on at the state level, I have another village I'm acquainted with has an extremely large net pension liability. So this is really nice to see, quite honestly.
Peggy, I'll just say, first of all, I appreciate you taking exception to those comments and fighting and standing up, and I agree. And I would say, even though Ann was reluctant to grade the audit, I think we would give it an A+, so.
I would too, and I think, I should have asked her ahead of time to prepare for the question, because I think that's a tough question to answer on your feet, and also to be sort of politically correct, I guess, so to speak, yeah.
And here, right back to the pension, Peggy.
Sure.
I think I heard her say, so 2040, this liability will be.
Well, that is the way the pension is designed. It's, it's amortized until 2040. That's a target, and obviously that's based on all these assumptions, 6.5% growth, they have expected, retirement ages, expected death rates, what's the word for that?
Actuary.
Thank you, the actuary in terms of life longevity. So they're all just guesswork. And I have a little problem with having a 100% goal, because it's not the villages going out of business in 2040. To sort of say, okay, we're gonna have this all paid off in 2040. No, we're gonna be an ongoing entity. So to have, I've seen some plans where it's like a 90%, goal. But that's what the state is doing is the 2040, and they're gonna push that can down the road, I'm convinced. We're gonna push the 2040, back further, because all these states, there are villages that have no net position because it's all eaten up by the liability. So that's a good question, though.
Thanks.
Okay, well, that's ancient history. We can move on from that. So for tonight, let's look at the financial statements for the financial statements for the 3 months ended July 31st, 2021, excuse me. So if we look at the flash report, on page 2, you'll see a total assets, of $3,531,000. We've got current liabilities of $788,000, and our equity right now is $2,743,000. Total revenues for the 3 months are $1,150,000. Our total expenses are $773,000 for net income of $377,000. And one reason I really like this flash report, and it's probably obvious, but I sometimes point things out that are obvious, so bear with me. But I really like how we sort of pick these major categories, and you can see right here the increase over last year or the decrease. Just right here, without going to all these pages behind here. That's why I think this report is really instrumental. And then below this bolded line, we've always pulled out what we consider unusual expenses for the year, to have a comparative from year to year. And we're now pulling out any federal expenses. So you'll see down below, we've pulled out some road work of $33,000, and to date, federally about $119,000 has been spent this year. And so you'll see that brings our regular operations to $529,000, and that compares to this point last year of $293,000. So once again, we're in an extremely good position at this point in the year. It's the same characters are outperforming. It's our permit revenue is holding strong. A little bit down this month from last month. Still we're at like 72% of budget. It's really quite strong. And sales tax is to date up $124,000 from last year. Now part of that is due to our added home rule sales tax. But the economy is, in that perspective is bounding back. So that's all good news.
Then we have the permit increases, which are breathtaking. Is that primarily tall grass?
It's some of the bigger homes, some of the single family homes. And that's what I think we talked about this earlier in the meeting a little bit. That's a defined inventory. That asset that we have, that land that's developed, those lots are being developed, and then that's all we'll have left in the village in terms of those impact fees and development fees.
They're expecting to be done next year.
Yeah. It's a good problem.
Yeah.
That's not really a problem. It's not a problem. And then the same on the expense side, the building plan review is up in accordance with the revenue, so that's not a surprise there. And our exterior building maintenance is up a bit from last year because we did replace the brick, some of the brick outside, and then we did the new windows this year. So all budgeted expenses, nothing out of the ordinary. So we can flip forward to page 9 and 10 real quick, just to see the actual budget report. This is always interesting to look at in totality. So on page 9, you'll see our total revenues at 39% actual, excuse me. Yeah, 38% actual budget. Our quarter through the year, but part of that is we've received half our real estate taxes. That does pull it up slightly, but once again, building permits is at 72% actual budget, and so that's, pulling that up quite a bit. Page 10, you can see that down toward the bottom, we're a little bit below actual budget. We're at 21%. If we were, right in the quarter, 25% would be, right for the quarter, but there's nothing to point out, per se. We still have a fair amount of spending left on featherling for 27%, but, pretty much a quarter through the year on target with that. And nothing really to point out there. On page 11, we do this once a quarter. I point out to you by vendor what's been spent in the general fund road maintenance is the non-MFT. And you'll see that Alliance contract, we spent $8,400 with them, and that was that was the Woodland Bridge, cleaning and sealing the deck there. There's been $12,066 spent with the Heber Township Road District, and that's various, you can see little repairs and replacements there. For the contract amount, that's our monthly contract with Cuba. We've spent $36,873 for the quarter. And then finally, the $13,000 for the Farm Trails Owners Association, that was for the drainage project. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all I have on the general fund, but happy to answer any questions before I move on.
Questions for the treasurer at this point?
Okay, we can
I
turn.
do have one. I'll wait till the end.
Okay. Page 12, we have the motor fuel tax fund. You can see we have net current assets there of about $493,000. We have no intent to spend money this year. We're holding on to that. $218,000 of that is for the Rebuild Illinois project. We do need to keep that segregated. We have lots of different pockets of money coming in. We'll have to keep, real good track of how it's being spent going forward. And then on page 16, the water sewer fund, we have net current assets in there of $1,725,000. No major improvements planned for this year in that fund as well, just ongoing repairs and maintenance. And happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question now off the financial reports, but back to the other. What's the process we followed in the past related to hiring a new auditor?
We'll have to go put an RFP out, and it's in the past, which is interesting. When we did this 5 years ago, I think, when I came on board, I've been here 8 years now, so I think 7 years ago, we put an RFP out for a new auditor. We got one response, and that was Lauterbach, thankfully, because they've just been fabulous. It's interesting, we're not a large job for a lot of people, so you need someone that's doing a lot of small government accounting. So we'll have to go out to bid. I do know Lauterbach is used to working with certain firms, and so they will definitely give us some names that they think would be good fits, for us as well.
Okay.
So, I went out for bid at Barrington Hills a year and a half ago. I got one response.
When do you expect we need to do
We'll
that?
have to do that pretty soon. Yeah, end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah, because we'll begin field work. We'll start talking about the audit like in February. And then they come, shortly after the end of the year, they come do all the sort of prep work. But most of the work is done in May and June for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Okay, I'll go on to the, do I go on to the invoices or do we vote on that first? I'm sorry, what's the, I don't remember this right now. Okay, you should approve those and I'll do the bills. We have to approve those, right, then go on to the bills?
Oh, you can read.
You can do it all.
Okay, so
You can
sorry.
do it all, one and all.
Yeah.
Okay, I was looking at 4B and then, okay. Oh, I'm so sorry, you're right, okay. I've only done this for 8 years now, that's like really, that's really called a brain freeze, right, okay, I apologize. Okay, so I have reviewed all the accounts payable, the warrants have been reviewed, and they're all here, they're all in order for approval. There's just a few that I'd like to highlight. KC Printing is on warrant A. KC Printing, $917.49, and that's the printing of the postcard for the 2 summer concerts this past summer. Waterback and Amon for $7,245, that's on the general fund, and then $3,105 on the water sewer fund. Together, that's our audit fee we split between the funds. That's for the full audit. And then Phone Lines Inc., and that's $992.50, and that's to replace 2 light poles at Fire Farm. And then on warrant B, there's one invoice to mention. It's not very large, but it's just different in nature. It's Steve Avery for $500, and that is entertainment for the barn stump. And then a few other things I just thought I would point out. So we did have 2 checks. This is on warrant A. 2 checks that were issued before the meeting, and one was to Kevin Purcell. That was for the concert that we previously had, and the other one was for the United States Postal Service. That was for $1,062.90, and that was the postage for the postcards. So we hadn't got that in time for the approval last month, but we needed the check to mail the postcards. So that's there for your approval. And just since it was talked about tonight, on that page as well is the Village of Tower Lakes, and that is the annual fee for the traffic control signal, the IG that we just passed tonight, and that total is $1,256.46. Just because that was talked about this evening. It's be very usual in nature for us, but so we just voted on it tonight. I'll point that out to you. Okay, that's all I have to mention, but happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Are there questions for the treasurer? Perfect. I appreciate this. You know, the flash report is something that I think is, especially for non-financially trained people, this is one-stop shopping. It's easy to understand. I really commend you all for using this format.
Yeah, we've kind of tweaked it over the years a little bit, added a few things here and there, and I think it's, it's pretty good right now. Yeah.
Well, and I like how you do the year-over-year comparison. It shows whether we're going north or south.
Right.
And I appreciate that.
And we intentionally broke out the home rule sales tax because that could obviously make it a little more difficult for the comparatives.
Well, and you put that gray bar there so that I can kind of know if there are extraordinary circumstances to explain a variation of consequence. So I mean, it's a very comprehensive set of statements, but I love the fact that I can read one page and have a pretty good sense of where we're at.
Absolutely.
Further questions for the treasurer? If not, the chair would like a motion to approve in block agenda items 8A through D. A, approve and accept the audited financial statements for fiscal year ending April 30th, 2021, Waterback and Amon. And B, approve the financial statements as of July 31st, 2021. C, pay bills in the amount of $204,851.50 as listed on the accounts payable warrant A, dated September 7th, 2021. And D, pay bills in the amount of $29,964.65 as listed on the accounts payable warrant B, dated September 7, 2021. May I have a motion to approve in block?
So moved.
By Trustee Hayes, second, please.
Second.
By Trustee Perkins. Thank you. The clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Hayes?
Yes.
Trustee Perkins?
Yes.
Trustee Burke?
Yes.
Trustee Thompson?
Yes.
Trustee Van Ryn?
Yes.
President Richardson?
Yes, thank you. Agenda item 9 is the administrator's report.
Okay, so as we heard earlier about Featherland Park, Chicagoland Paving has completed their punch list work last week as I took my peek, and so the park is now officially open. I saw somebody there this weekend walking around, so I wanted to stop and talk to them, but I was in a hurry, so I didn't. So that's all good news.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
There's vegetation, grass, I'm not sure what we're trying to grow there.
Yeah,
Is that something is that going to be natural, or will that be mowed grass, or what?
it'll be natural. I put a little bit more information in the peak about that with the natives. And so that whole middle area around the track is mostly what's called mesic prairie. So they planted the seeds this year, and most of those natives have not started to come up yet, or if they are, they're very small.
Right.
So they plant what's called a cover crop, which looks like weeds. It's some weeds, some grasses and stuff. So they keep that mowed high where they can give the shade to the natives and as it starts to grow. And they can go over it with a mower like 6 to 10 inches high, and it keeps protecting it. So RES will be maintaining that for this year and the next, actually the next 3 years in their maintenance and monitoring plan. So next year, like some will come up a little bit, but they'll still have that weedy look. And then after 3 years, it will start looking more like what our hill does over at Pryor Farm with the natives. And then we just have the maintenance with spot treatment with herbicides and pulling weeds. So, yeah. And we actually also put some stuff on our website about it in case anybody goes to the Feathering Park website so they can read about sleep, creep, and leap, of how the plants do. The first year they sleep, then the second year they creep, and the third year they're leaping all over the place. So,
A second question related to that feathering. Did we ever sort of, when we closed the loop with the feathering family, well, they had come in and talked about the naming, and we went around and around and decided to go that route, but did we close the loop with them?
I did not close the loop with them. I thought perhaps when we do our grand opening, that they would do a special invite. They probably wouldn't hurt to give them a call now, and I could do that.
I was just thinking it might be nice, yeah, and then tell them, that we would be interested in their participation in the upcoming, just because I feel like we sort of maybe left them hanging a little bit. We said we could take it into consideration.
Yeah, my guess is they're meeting in the village.
Good point. Good point.
So T-Mobile lease. So a representative of T-Mobile has informed us that they do not intend to renew the lease on our tower. In their minds, they paid us the almost $28,000 in January to extend the lease by 1 year, which will give them time to remove their equipment before the end of this year. But they have not given us official notice of anything. Attorney Bateman can probably expand on that.
They did send an email notice that said they intend to remove their equipment by the end of October. And explain their theory under which they're holding over. But, municipalities are different than other private entities. It takes a decision by this board to extend a lease or a contract. And so there's a legal flaw in their theory. That being said, I think it's close to being resolved when they get off the tower.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that, and then we'll have to have Dixon Engineering go up and do the inspection after they're gone, make sure they have any damage when they remove their materials, and then we'll bill them for that.
Was it Sprint that had the original lease, or was it always T-Mobile?
It was, this was Voice Street. And Sprint has other equipment up there. And their equipment, the Sprint equipment, is authorized to be up there until 23.
Another 2 years, so, or 2 years.
The reason I bring it up, I'm very familiar with what's going on with T-Mobile and Sprint. And they're going to, basically, all of Sprint's technology, it's going to bye-bye here shortly. And they're converting everybody to the T-Mobile through changing the SIM chip. So all the Sprint equipment out there, not saying it's worthless, but T-Mobile is not going to rely on that. After about 6 months from now, they're done with the Sprint equipment. So I didn't know how that played.
I found in trying to restructure our office plan, I found them to be in chaos, basically.
Okay. I would believe that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So more to come on that once we hear something. I'm pleased to report that the 2020 census count for Lake Barrington has gone up from 4,973 in 2010 to 5,100 in 2020. So that's the preliminary count. They haven't finalized those numbers, but that's the numbers they've released. So what that could mean for us is more motor fuel tax funds, more local government distributed funds. So we'll wait and see if that gets finalized. On a good news thing, the Chicago Region Trees Initiative Initiative through the Morton Arboretum's Plant Trees for Communities program will be donating to Lake Barrington a 6 to 10 foot tall, 1.5 inch diameter native tree. They don't know yet if it's going to be an oak or sycamore yet, but they will be dropping that off in Mundelein at the Southwest Lake County drop-off location, and then Cuba Township has agreed to pick up the tree from the drop-off location. So now I'm looking for a company to volunteer to plant the tree location for it. So more to come on that once we find out. That'll be happening later this year.
Are we all getting shovels?
That might happen. That might happen.
That's right.
Quick question now, but where are you going to plant?
Not 100% sure yet. Open to suggestions. We have a spot in the Healthy Hedges area because of our limited, we had a $10,000 grant to do that, but most of that money went for the native plants. So because the trees were so expensive, so we only had one new tree, but we got area for 2 new trees there if we wanted to do that in the right of way. And I'm not quite sure what the tree's going to be yet. So that was another possibility I talked to TJ about. We've had a few trees come down. They had to ride their trucks over the newly planted natives to get to the trees, to remove the trees that came down after that last storm. So we have to walk in and see if it's something like they can go over with the truck again. And that, great idea, but I'm not 100% sure. So, yeah. And then last but not least, the masonry company is scheduled to begin their stucco EFT work here, and they're going to start tomorrow. So, yay.
Questions for the administrator on her report? All righty, thank you very much. Agenda item number 10 this evening is the clerk's report.
Okay, Cuba Township will have their free shredding event, and that will occur at the Blue Farmhouse on Cuba Road. That's going to be on Saturday, October 23rd from 9 to 1, or until the truck is full. So there'll be a limit of 4 bags per household. Also, the Cuba Township Wide Fall Brush Pickup is set up for the week of October 25th. So brush may be placed at the end of your driveway by 7 a.m. on October 25th. It's going to take the road district all week to go around to all the homes. They will not circle back, so they're asking that it's all set out on Monday, October 25th. And I have all this information on the website. And if you haven't signed up for e-news yet, you can do that and you'll get an email reminder sent to you. So that's it.
Questions for the clerk? And again, our congratulations on your master's. Wonderful. Agenda item 11, reports of the standing committee. 11A, COVID-19 response task force, Trustee Burke.
Thank you. Most of you are aware, all regions of Illinois remain in phase 5 of the Restore Illinois plan. However, we are in real danger of moving backwards to phase 4, or possibly bridge phase because of this current spike. So that is something that is being watched very closely. The criteria for that is positivity rate, it's ICU bed availability, and hospitalizations are factors that the state takes into account. And right now, the test positivity in Illinois is 5.4%, which is below the 8% threshold for moving, and hopefully moving in the right direction. Lake County is at 5% test positivity rate at this point in time. Good news is test positivity for Region 9, which is our region, peaked in mid-August at 6.5% and is down seemingly has been in slow decline ever since, so moving in the right direction. ICU bed availability has been under the threshold of 20%, which means below the required threshold of more than 20% available for about the last, I think here, about the last 10 days. So that's one that's not in compliance right now. So all 3 of those measures have to get out of compliance. And hospitalizations in Region 9 have been steadily increasing since the first of the month. In fact, they've tripled in the past 30 days. So 2 out of 3 measures are going the wrong way. Hopefully what happens is the leading indicator is in the test positivity, and hopefully as that starts to decline, we see hospitalizations and then ICU bed utilization start to recover before we get to the danger of the threshold. Along the route of vaccinations, the state is now at 53%, and I did verify, I think Trustee Perkins might have asked, is that for all residents or just eligible residents? It's actually all residents of all ages, so they take total population of the state. But they do break it down to eligibility, 12 and over, 18 and over, 65 and over, and they give metrics for that, which I don't bother to put here. But if you go on the website, they show you. And as an example, 81% of residents in the state of Illinois over the age of 65 are fully vaccinated. So it's moving in the right direction, but very slowly. Last month I reported 51%, so it's jumped 2% in 30 days, which you'd like to see it be better than that. Lake County's at 56, so fully vaccinated, so we're running a little bit ahead of the state metrics. The data continues to verify how effectively the vaccine is controlling infection rates and, more importantly, hospitalization and death rates. While some deaths and or hospitalizations in vaccinated people have occurred, or these breakthrough infections as they call it, it's still considered very rare that would result in death or hospitalization unless there were underlying or mitigating circumstances to begin with that person that was compromised in some other way. With that said, obviously Illinois and Lake County continue to push hard to get as many people here vaccinated as possible. Most of you are well aware the CDC is now currently discussing and recommending COVID vaccine booster shots for individuals with compromised immune systems. As you know, there's been a little controversy about whether they want to roll that out to all others in terms of whether this booster will ever be something that's recommended or when it will be recommended. At one point they were saying, yes, we're going to recommend it. They've kind of backed off that position. I think they want to look at a little bit more data on that, but boosters may be right around the corner. But certainly boosters are already being given locally to people with compromised immune systems at any local, and my understanding is anywhere you can go and do that walk-in. You don't even need to make appointments anymore, so it's quite readily available. You simply need to determine if your booster for which vaccine, Pfizer or Moderna, you need to just make sure the place you're walking into carries that. A lot of Walgreens, I've learned, carry one or the other now. They do that purposely. So they'll send you to this Walgreens in Lake Zurich if you're a Moderna person, or this Walgreens South Lake Zurich if you're Pfizer. They just do that to split it and to eliminate confusion in the process. We're seeing more and more businesses, you're reading about it, venues, restaurants, theaters, sports arenas requiring vaccination now and proof of negative COVID test to even gain entry. So you won't be able to go to a Chicago Bulls game or a Blackhawks game unless you're vaccinated or have proof of a negative COVID test. So, and more businesses are requiring that of their employees, and we know that in the state of Illinois, vaccinations are now required for all healthcare workers. Recently, Governor Pritzker has remandated the wearing of masks in all indoor public spaces, and crowded outdoor spaces is highly recommended. And that is my report on COVID. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Andy, maybe this is just something for discussion. What's your thoughts on, like everyone's vaccinated for free right now? Do you see in the future, in like 2 years, 5 years, I'm sure we'll still be getting vaccinated. Are the pharmaceutical companies going to continue? I mean, is the government going to continue these vaccinations, or what's?
Well, I couldn't predict that. I guess if you would think of it almost like any things that we get, flu shots or otherwise, I think at some point if this becomes sort of commonplace or mainstream, that this is something that's required, doubtful that the pharmaceutical companies are always going to get paid. Likely, like most today, insurance will cover 100% of these things, no differently if you get a flu shot. And then if not, there are programs available to people where they don't have insurance that it would cover, because it remains in the best interest of the public for everyone to get vaccinated, and they never want people to not get vaccinated because they can't afford to do it. So either through insurance or some kind of governmental assistance, I suspect COVID shots will always remain free to people who want to go get them.
Sure.
But that's pure
That's
speculation.
great. I just, I was just curious.
Pure speculation on my part, and just looking at the path of how many other of these types of vaccinations go. When it's in the best interest of the public for everyone to get vaccinated, then generally we find ways to make sure that's done without financial burden to people who can't afford it. Other questions on COVID? If not, with your permission, can I just roll up
Absolutely.
economic development?
11C.
While I'm on such a streak. So based upon our discussion earlier at the committee of the whole meeting, then I appreciate the questions and challenges, and also the direction that I received from the board that we will proceed with option C, which is we will continue to educate ourselves on TIF, and we will look for development opportunities, and if and when we see those development opportunities, we will have the right to pull out the TIF card and waive that in the face of anybody who might be interested. So that really helps me, and will change now. We will take the energy that we've been pouring into TIF, and we will pour that into pursuing development opportunities, because I think right now there is certainly some interest in activity that's being generated. So that's where the time will be spent, and we will keep everyone apprised on that. So thanks for your attention and interest in this process and learning through it, because it's been a lot to absorb. And I'm always available for questions if people need to hear more about TIF going forward.
I think just for benefit of the record, since Al is filming for the record,
Yes.
that I'll ask council to explain the notion of an inducement resolution.
Certainly. And if you, so an inducement resolution is really used by the village board to make a commitment that tell a potential developer that if they proceed with the preliminary steps for their project, that if the village does proceed with the TIF district, they will be able to benefit from from that district. And so it's not, doesn't have specific dollars amount. It's just saying generally we recognize that you're going to start your project, and and we want you to know that if you do the project, and if we do create the TIF, you'll be able to experience some of those benefits.
And it's just part of the option C deck of cards.
It is to say we haven't created the TIF district yet, but if we do, you will be able to benefit from it, and we recognize the specific beneficiary by passing the resolution identifying them.
So it kind of puts an engagement ring on us, but it doesn't get us to the altar.
Correct. It's more like a friendship ring.
Wow. I'm rubbing off on you, man.
That is excellent, and I appreciate the clarification, Mr. Bateman, and I would just simply add to that the process that we went through on TIF has been one of a great education and also great respect for both the power of the TIF as well as the challenges that they could create. So we don't look at this lightly. We will reserve the right to take that avenue if and when we believe we have the right development opportunities that would both benefit the developer and the community at large at the same time. So we reserve the right now that we are educated and we know how to get that done, to leverage that if and when we feel that it's fit to do so. So I think we arrived at a very good place. I want to thank Karen for her tireless energy on this, and our consultants who helped us with this process, and the rest of you for working through it with us. More to come on that front, I am certain. The Peterson Plaza, or Lake Barrington Commons, as we sometimes familiarly refer to it, on Route 14, completed all of its painting. If you haven't been by it, it looks very nice at both buildings, both the professional buildings, so at least they have sort of a more common looking facade. It looks good. The new restaurant we've been talking about, Domenico's, that will be located there, continues its design and build out process, and still hoping to open by November or December, according to its owners. One of the design concepts that they're looking at, and I think they will be coming to the village with plans for, is to add an awning to the front, to add some depth and some character and ambiance to the front, as opposed to just the flat front of the building. And that awning would be double as their sign, and I think it would be downlighted or something to that effect. We haven't seen any renderings for that, I don't believe, have we? So we have offered our assistance in developing those programs and working with them to get that done quickly, to figure out the right way to do that. So we are still waiting for that to be done. On a related note, I had a nice conversation today, spoke with Daniel Weimer, who's the owner of DD Menswear, and I just was checking in on him really because I hadn't spoken to him in a while, and he admonished me for not coming in and buying my summer outfits, and I said I'd hit him up for fall. He said, good, because I'm pretty much putting fall stuff out now, so. But I had a very positive conversation, positive report. He said his business is excellent, so much so he has extended his lease for 5 years. Wow. So he's bullish. Yeah. I was shocked when he told me that. He said he wanted more, he couldn't get more. He said he very much likes it there and is very bullish about his prospects there. So much so, he also moved his warehouse, which is currently over on Hillview, that he had about 1,300 square feet leased over there. He's now leasing 3,500 square feet in the basement area of the professional building at Peterson Plaza.
Wow.
So he's really committed to that spot, and he's really excited about it. And he obviously is bullish if he's almost tripling his warehouse size and extending his lease. So good for him, good for us, and he remains incredibly appreciative, and as a Lake Barrington resident, also very happy to live here and work here. And he also said the restaurant opening, he suspects, will have a pretty significant impact on his business positively, just because of traffic count, people who didn't know he was there or whatnot. So, and he's already met the owner, and they know each other now, and that's how he operates. And so they're trying to help each other out with cross promotion and stuff. So I think it's a very nice thing that's developed there. So it was nice to hear that from one of our newer businesses, that things are going well. As we talked about last month, the marketplace now has a new owner, STG Group out of Northern California. Tony Lombardo, who was representing the landlord previously, is staying with them and had a previous relationship with STG Group. I remain in pretty close contact with Tony Lombardo. There's a lot of activity at the center with some new tenants the one is Athletico that we talked about. Another one I'm not ready to talk about yet, but they're close to signing the lease, so we're going to have the place pretty much filled up, which is great news. The new owners are very much interested in investing. They have committed and already pulled permits to repave the parking lot, which will make a big difference aesthetically to that shopping area, because that parking lot's been kind of beat for a while. And more excitingly, they have a plan to do some landscaping along Kelsey Road and at the corner of Kelsey and 59, and they have a plan in the works right now with their landscaper that they will share with us, and they have asked their landscaper in the new retaining wall to build in the Lake Barrington name. So that may not come completely for free, but we're going to talk about that in terms of getting sort of a gateway sign incorporated into their landscape. plan. So all of that's forthcoming in the next few weeks from them, but we're bullish about that. And as we spoke, the STG group is actually a California investment group who likes this area a lot. So we'll get to know them, and maybe there'll be other opportunities that are presented as well from a development perspective. And that's my report.
Well, it's a perfect segue to 11B, which is branding and communications. Trustee Samurai.
Thank you. Based on the input that I've received from the trustees over the past couple of months, I've drafted an initial branding and communications plan for Lake Barrington. And I've received input from Max Strategies. President Richardson and I will go through it later this week. And I feel good about the progress in that regard. We'll share it with the board as well. One of the lowest hanging fruits on that is the development of a new logo. And Trustee Berg, it would be great on this potential gateway sign that you spoke of at 5914, if we could incorporate that potentially into that signage. So we've enlisted a graphic designer that was suggested by Max Strategies, who is now looking at potential designs for that logo. We should have it in front of you in the next 30 to 60 days. We'll get you some options to choose from on that. Other activities on the planned timeline for September include building an editorial calendar that will leverage across our digital, social, newsletter property, and look at an enhanced social media approach. We're also kicking off potential discussion for updating our website, making it a little bit more user-friendly, bringing it to more current user-friendly ways. Also looking at our press release boilerplate, the standard language that you see at the bottom there, preparing for any news that we'll be issuing in the coming months. And then something that's been brought up in the past is formalizing outreach to our village homeowner associations, using that channel of presidents and secretaries to communicate news and also get them enlisted in our social media activities and so on. So I think that's a potential channel for us to leverage even more going forward.
Thank you. Questions for, I should have asked earlier, any questions for Trustee Burke on his report or on Trustee Van Ryn on her report? Teresa, I'll just have one. You and I spoke, as you did with all the other trustees. I can't help but acknowledge the fact that you had the big benefit coming into this job, not only because of your own background in your day job, but also because the gentleman sitting to your right did an awful lot of preparatory work that set the stage for a running start. And I think the success that I'm anticipating is really one that had its nurturing roots done by the gentleman with the Georgia Dogs baseball nets. When I look at the notion of this, we looked at a project earlier in the year, in the spring, and Trustee Burke and the administrator spent a lot of time on it. We learned a lot about what homeowners exiting dense urban areas look for coming out to less dense, more open areas. And it was key to go talk to the way to get to the realtors in Chicago who might be recommending is to make sure that the Barrington affiliates that they all have are aware of us. And Andy, I don't remember where we landed. I know you and Karen did all the work that you needed, but I don't remember if we've transitioned that body of work to you for incorporation, because when people begin to look, I have this thought in my mind. My daughter went to law school in Chicago, so she lived at about 1300 North Clark, and the building was filled with a lot of young singles and then a lot of young married couples pushing a stroller. And I think of those couples, and when they start to look at what the schools are like and more outdoors, open spaces, or what, how the heck do we help them find us? Besides going to the realtors and making sure they understand. And that's kind of a retail sale. We go directly one-on-one. And then there was kind of the wholesale notion, search engine optimization, things that really drive it. Will kind of the plan you're working on include those kinds of initiatives as well?
Absolutely, and Trustee Berg did share a comprehensive bit of work, like you mentioned, the notes and the discussions with the realtors and the original two-pager, if you will, that stemmed out of that quality work that I think with a little bit of updating could be used in a lot of these ways that I've already described.
I was very, very excited to hand those off to her. Wasn't I? Yeah. You're it.
We all have stories about you handing your work off to us.
Yeah.
Further questions for Trustee Van Ryn or Trustee Burke? If not, 11D is external relations, just a couple of quick things. I do want to kind of take an informal pulse check of people on an issue, and it relates to what Andy was saying on COVID. But first, I hosted the U.S. Chamber of Commerce webinar, and it was fascinating. They had this brilliant woman from New Orleans. She's an infectious disease physician, and it was almost kind of a speed dating thing. You queued your questions, and she just kept answering questions as fast as she can until the hour ran out. And I don't know that that would be quite what we need in a small setting like this, but I wonder, and I'm perfectly willing, Andy, if you don't have the time, to reach out to Karen Lambert at Good Shepherd to see if they would have an infectious disease physician who could come in and do a 10-minute where we all bombard her or him with questions on this stuff, because so many of the lay people, myself included, need just clarification of things. We get information overload, and I'm not sure what sources I trust anyway. And so to get somebody that we know we can trust who's from our community might be worthwhile. I'm perfectly happy to help on that, Andy. If not, just feel free to reach out to Karen and Good Shepherd on that. Second thing, I've had some very pleasant emails with the staff of Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. She is one of the 2 members of Congress that represent Lake Barrington. She represents the Lakeland Estates neighborhood. The balance of our community is represented by Congressman Sean Caston. But Congresswoman Underwood is on the Appropriations Committee, and her staff has reached out on, are there, and I'm so glad you're still here, because I'm going to call on you about appropriations. Lauren and I were talking recently about Flint Lake and the environmental challenges facing Flint Lake. Mostly a lot of silt and overgrowth and so forth. And that just screams Appropriations Committee. You know this from your day job. That's a classic kind of initiative because it's a lot of money to do it. A small town could never afford it. And it's just, I'm going to keep you all posted, but I've been thrilled with the responsiveness of her staff. My daughter's congressional staff, my wife and I were, so I kind of know what it looks like. And I just have to say, I haven't had occasion to interact with Representative Caston's staff, although our friend and former colleague, General Rigby, did, and he spoke highly too. They want to know our issues. The staff wants to come out for a tour of Lake Barrington and learn what we're worried about. And I'm going to drive them down into your neighborhood and show them that lake and say, we need to get that dredged and maybe some shoreline enhancements done. That's an infrastructure thing. And maybe a combination of state and federal grants would be helpful. But I've had good email exchanges, and I'm looking to speak with the district director, I hope, next week. But here's what I wanted to ask you guys about. And Therese, you and I both have we both work for Zebra Technologies, and they're a global leader in the kinds of technologies that provide a digital voice to people, transactions, and assets. DoD uses a lot of our stuff to keep track of warehouses and MRO depot networks and so forth. We have a solution that we've developed with a reseller and a software vendor for vaccine credentials. I have a presentation on this that you guys won't believe. It is just 4 slides. And I'd like to run you through it next month at our meeting. We'll put it up on the board here. Here's why I'm interested. Canada's looking at a federal mandate down to the population. You will get a vaccine in your arm. Prime Minister Trudeau called the snap election for later this month. And I've been on the phone with my lobbyists who work for me up there a lot, and they're looking at much more of a top-down. The Brits have kind of taken that approach. The Aussies not as much. The Aussies are like the eggs. In the United States, the White House made a decision, and I think it was the right one for a variety of reasons. They weren't going to do a federal mandate. we Americans don't like to be told what to do. So they've let sectors of the economy, one at a time, force the issue. Universities say, you're not coming back to campus and living in a dorm unless you have proof of vaccination. Restaurants are beginning to say it. Hotels and airlines and cruise lines are beginning to say it. Restaurants in Chicago, and I've been following this really carefully, restaurants in Chicago are beginning to say, if you don't show a vaccine credential at the door, you ain't coming in to dine. And I've been watching these articles over the last 3 or 4 months. The Tribune's run a bunch of them, sometimes a few as well. I don't want to go through another winter of no indoor dining in our restaurants. And I'm of the mind, and I haven't gotten there yet, but I want to put this out for all of you to think about. I'll send everybody some stuff, and I'll send it to Lisa so it can be part of the public record. And again, I disclose that I work with Zebra Technologies, and we certainly offer a solution to the market on these things. Would you be willing to hold a verifiable vaccine credential that is secure from fraud and counterfeiting? Because otherwise you can buy them online for $200 and they're completely counterfeit. Would you be willing, do you think the village residents would support the use of vaccine credentials as a requirement to get into restaurants this winter that would otherwise be closed potentially because of COVID bans? So that's the pondering question I want. And I go back and forth on it in my own mind. But I tell you, I was on a mayor's call with mayors from around the United States. The big city mayors are there. I mean, the big city mayors are there. They're not going through another winter of no bars and no restaurants open. So the question is, you know, the Zazas is a great example because they're a real community gathering center. Do we want them to be closed to nothing but takeout again for another winter when there might be a technology solution that would allow them to confidently tell patrons, you can come in here safely? I want you guys to think about this because I'm struggling with it. But my real policy goal for the village is I want to avoid, as long as we have any ability to affect it, another winter of no dining and those restaurants all closed and dark at night. That was a very hard thing to see and experience last year. So I won't put you on the spot and ask you for an initial reaction right now. I just want you to know I'm going to be circulating that to you, as it's been a big part of my life. The Australians are going to get there pretty quickly. They had a different strategy on COVID, but they're beginning to change. I'm following Canada closely and the UK closely, the English-speaking democracies. And our cousins around the Five Eyes, UK, Canada, US, New Zealand, Australia, seem to be moving more and more in this direction of mandated vaccines. And if you're going to have mandated vaccines, you're going to have credentials. And there are a lot of civil liberties issues here that I think are very important. So I'm not quick to judge, gee, I say we have to do this, but I want us to wrestle with it, because what bothers me as a mayor, as your city council members, I don't want to see that restaurant with the lights off again from November to May. It just, and if there's a technology solution that allows it to stay open in a manner that's safe and state law otherwise permits, I sure as heck want to have us consider it. So just think about this. And if people watch this, please don't call them and so forth, because I'm just going to share information. There's no board intention to take any action. I just want to begin a community conversation. Repeat, no intention to take any action. No intention to take any action, just to assess leadership reaction to the issue as a possibility. I want more tools in the quiver, more arrows in the quiver if Delta gets out of hand. So, sorry for the harangue, but that's my quick report, my report for tonight. 11E is Finance, HR, and Administration, Trustee Hayes.
Yeah, so we've covered this in the agenda tonight in the packet, but I think Karen reminded me, and I saw this before, but there's ways that these funds can be spent. I think this is an opportunity for us to think about that. I also think it's an opportunity to maybe engage the community here. on their thoughts on improvements from these funds, because there's a variety of different things you can do. Here's an example: investing in broadband infrastructure. And obviously, we supported small businesses last year. That was vital. Providing aid to tourism, rebuilding public sector capacity. There's a whole bunch of areas that this money can be used for, and I think we should start thinking about it, because I think the time when it comes, you have to spend it, right? So I think to spend it wisely, and I think the community, it'd be beneficial to them to understand what's coming. It's certainly in the meeting minutes here, and it's being recorded, and we talk about it, but it's an opportunity. This is not a small amount of change, and it's limited to the purposes in there. So that's one thought, and I know that when the money comes, that's usually when people start thinking about it, but I'm just recommending maybe we can pass this around again, because I think it's worthy of just looking at it. And I don't know, I'm not the smart guy, maybe this is something Teresa, you and Andy, and maybe President Richardson think about how do we engage the community on this? Because I think they should have a vote on this, because at the end of the day, this is federal tax dollars, and everybody in this community contributed those, so I think it'd be worthwhile to do that. As far as human resources and finance, you heard the other, great job, Peggy, I appreciate it. I don't have any additional updates today, so I'll close on that.
Any questions for Trustee Hayes? Thank you. 11F, infrastructure and open spaces, Trustee Perkins.
Thank you very much. I have no report.
11G, public safety, Trustee Scheller is not with us this evening. Does the administrator have anything to report on his behalf?
No.
11H, Veterans Affairs and Special Events, Trustee Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin with e-news. New subscribers, as you may recall, our current goal has been 300 e-news subscribers, and in August we reported 297 new total subscribers. We'd like to tonight recommend and announce 304.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. It's party time. So our next, we have two more goals now. Short-term goal for the next few months is 325. The long-term goal is 400. Let's see if we can get there. Everyone, please ask everyone you see on the street, are you a subscriber to e-news? Just go up to them and ask them. See what they have to say about it. But seriously, anyone you know in the village, if there's any opportunity to suggest they subscribe, please do so. Special events. I'd like to report that the Kevin Purcell and the Nightburners Rock and Roll concert, we had 71 cars and we had 253 concert goers. That's wonderful. Fantastic. 253.
That's okay. What was the first one that we had?
71 cars.
How did that compare to the first one?
Oh, nothing, more than twice.
More than twice.
More than twice. We had 150, I think.
It's kind of like our permit revenue.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
Yeah.
Even though it was the night before school?
Yes, it was terrific.
That was the band.
Band was great. They were terrific. Now, we have the Barrington coming up. It's been promoted in the village newsletter, and LBS's September Shorelines newsletter. LBS has also, they have a weekly announcement newsletter, and they run that every time in there. And the last Thursday, LBS Shoresman September lunch at Zaza's. It was announced again there. So we're hoping to have a good turnout for that. And hopefully we won't need the rain date of September 25. Cross your fingers.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. Village road signs, promoting our restaurants. I just did a run around the past couple of days, and there are some down. I'm going to have to replace them. I have a few left for replacements, and hopefully that will be enough. An update on my work trying to get Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears to do a charity event in Lake Barrington. I've spoken twice now with a young lady on the staff over there, of the vice president, and she's working on that, so hopefully we'll have something.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. Let's see. All right, Veterans Affairs. The veterans provided August concert parking assistance, and they'll do so at the barn stop again. And I sent an email to President Richardson, Village Administrator Karen Dalton Lang, and Clerk Lisa Pena Tulapa, that September 11th, just a short notice, that veterans of LPS are going to have a memorial ceremony on Saturday, September 11th at 8:46 a.m. at the Memorial Garden. Village officials, staff, and village residents are all invited to attend if they'd like to do so. And there'll also be an opportunity for people to say a few words if they'd like to. And an early warning, if you will, November 11th is Veterans Day. President Richardson has graciously accepted their request to be the keynote speaker. Again, he's done that before, he's been very well received. And as part of his job, he and I will be talking about that, but he's going to be also telling us about Tunnel to Towers, because Tunnel to Towers, the Lake Zurich people will be there reporting on their program. It's going to be a really, really terrific event. It'll be held at the lodge at the shores of Lake Barrington, and shores, and everyone's welcome to attend that. And Tunnel to Towers, yes. On September 11th, 9/11, a firefighter was driving into the city to be on his watch, and the towers were hit, and the tunnel he was in was closed. No cars were allowed to pass through the tunnel. He got out of his car, put all of his gear on, and literally ran, I think it was about 2 miles, to the site, and began to work with the other firefighters there, and lost his life there. And his brother, his younger brother, I believe he's his younger brother, began Tunnel to Towers in memory of him. And they do a wonderful job of getting homes for veterans. And not just military veterans, but fire veterans and police veterans and so forth, who have lost limbs, getting them homes that allow them to live as normal a life as possible. And it's a wonderful program, and we hope that everyone will come and listen to them. It's interesting, the people that will be there will be a husband and wife in Lake Zurich who live there. She is a police officer, and they've been working on this for a couple of years now, since it began, I believe, and they will be there to talk about Tunnel to Towers and what it means and what everyone can do to help. That's my report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Questions for Trustee Thompson? Thank you, Jim. That's wonderful. Under agenda, there's no old business under 12, or ordinances under 13, or resolutions under 14, or no business, new business under 15. Second opportunity in the agenda for the public to address the village board. Peggy or Lauren, anything else? Okay. There's no need for a closed session, so this is the motion that we've all been waiting for. Chair would like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Trustee Thompson, second please.
Second.
By Trustee Van Ryn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.